when you were in the KGB, you were serving the agency that protected the ideology of communism. Once communism went away, you made a U-turn. Is there an ideology at the heart of Vladimir Putin, or are you ultimately just a pragmatic man?
Если говорить о коммунистической идеологии.
If you mean the communist ideology, we used to live in a different country and in a different world. We were brought up with different ideals. And if we speak about my personal views, I believe the communist idea is a beautiful but harmful fairy tale. It is clear that the state cannot exist on this as a foundation. It is also obvious that there is nothing that can substitute this ideology except democracy.
Nearly 20 years ago, that was a younger and relatively unknown Vladimir Putin who was elected president of Russia. The former KGB agent succeeded Boris Yeltsin and inherited an economic crisis, a war in Chechnya, and a deteriorating nuclear arsenal. The first Western journalist to land an exclusive one-on-one interview with the newly elected Russian president, Tom Brokaw. Tom joins us now. Also with us, the author and NBC News presidential historian, Michael Beschloss. You know, Tom, you were obviously there and get word, first Western journalist to get word that East Germany was shutting down and that the Berlin Wall would be coming down. Also, the first Western journalist to interview Vladimir Putin. I'm curious, looking back 22 years later, what are your thoughts today on the Putin that you saw then and the Putin we're watching now?
He's just not changed. He was a KGB agent then, and he's operating now as a KGB agent. People may not realize the night the Berlin Wall came down, there was such joy in the West. Putin went to his home and cried in sorrow about what was happening. And that tells you all you need to know about what he thinks his role is. And it seems to me right now that he's trying to take advantage of the chaos, not just in the United States, but in the American Western situation that we have going on, not just here, but in Europe and other places as well. But my guess is that he's probably a little surprised by the resistance.
I was going to ask you about that, Tom. 1989, obviously, you were there reporting on it. I know, Michael, you and I, both old enough to remember the events of 1989 and how quickly history moved. It moved at an extraordinary pace. That seems to be happening again this week as you look at Sweden deciding they no longer want to be neutral. You look at Germany now rearming in a significant way for the first time since 1945. History is moving so quickly. Tom, I wonder, do you think what we are seeing now is a coda to what we first saw in 1989?
Well, I hope that Michael agrees with me on this. We generally agree on most things.
We do.
But the fact of the matter is, what we're seeing now is chaos, not just in the Western world, but almost everywhere in the world. And a lot of it has to do with the kind of jet form of communications. You know, and every 30 seconds, the world changes. And it's very hard to keep up with it. In so many ways, it seems to me that this is another miscalculation on the part of the Russian leader. He just didn't, he thought he could get away with this. But in some ways, it has kind of unified the United States. But there are still many who are resisting this president and his legitimacy, beginning with Donald Trump. And so I think that this is a crucial time for the country and our system to think about what it is that we want and the kind of portraits that we want to send to the country and to the world.
Michael, I've told the story of how in 1982, 1983, my professor of Soviet history said that the Russians were far more concerned with the Xerox machine than they were with Reagan deploying Pershing cruise missiles to Western Europe. I thought, especially looking back all these years later, 40 years later, I thought it was an extraordinarily insightful observation when you see how grossly Vladimir Putin underestimated just what Tom was talking about, this information age was going to do to his best laid plans.
That is absolutely true. And I want to say it is so great to be here with Tom because we Americans have learned so much of what we know about Russia from Tom back to the point when he was one of the first Western journalists to interview Mikhail Gorbachev, the Berlin Wall, as you mentioned, and then to show us about Putin. And, you know, in 1989 and 1991, when the Cold War seemed to be ended, one of the things that we Americans all said was, you know, now the democracy is coming to Russia, we will never have to worry about a Cold War again. And many people said there won't be another tyrant like some neo-Stalin because Russians now know what freedom is like and they won't give it up. And if the economy doesn't work, they'll demand that a tyrant go. And also that democracy does not lead to unnecessary wars. As recently as a couple of months ago, Joe and Tom, I think people in the United States had some reason to question whether we were all right. Look what has been happening the last few days with Putin, doing something that's totally against the interests of his people, totally against modern feelings about what democracy is, and staying away from wars that are illegal and unnecessary, even in Russia, which we would have thought was a total dictatorship until almost the last few hours. It's beginning to crumble.
Tom, in that historic interview with Putin, you also asked the Russian leader about a subject that he's really rarely ever talked about, his daughters. Let's take a look.
You have 2 young daughters. What kind of country will they be living in 20 years from now?
Мне бы очень не хотелось, чтобы...
I would hate to see my country, Russia, lose its identity, its face. What I would like to see that the cultural roots of Russia that we're so proud of and we so love, that form us as people, shape us as people, be preserved with all due respect to the common values of our world. I would like to see my children see themselves as Russians.
You know, it's very interesting, Tom. You can read between the lines now, 20 years later, and see that is Vladimir Putin, the man who openly wept when East Germany basically closed down for business and the Berlin Wall started to come down. But even there, you read between the lines, he's saying, we understand the common values of the West, but I don't share them, and I don't want my daughter to grow up in a Western world here. We are Russian.
But I think, Joe, that we have to keep a couple of things in mind. Just look at the size of his power. It's not all about the 11 time zones in Russia. His power comes from the apparatchiks. Those are the people who've got the money in Russia, and they control what he's going to do and how he's going to do it. The rest of the country is still where it was 20 years ago in terms of personal views and what they want for their own government. He's the most dangerous man that I can remember, going all the way back to the early days of the Soviet Union, because I just don't think he has a conscience about what his obligation is, not just to his own people, but to the world and to the idea of peace. And we're seeing that now. You got to remember, 11 times in Russia, and there are whole parts of it that I've been through, east and west, north and south, where they're still living like in the 19th century, and they feel no connection to this man. But he understands that this is a rare opportunity for him that he's going to try to take advantage of. And I think it's up to the West to draw the line.
Michael Beschloss and Tom Brokaw, thank you all so much as always. It's just been an absolutely fascinating conversation. We really appreciate your input. Hey, thanks so much for watching our YouTube channel. You can follow up on today's top stories and breaking news, or catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.